the number of coaches that told me you need to have systems and processes, and you need to have plans for your day, for your week, for your month, that there's really a lot more structure to success than you might think there would be. Yes, there's a lot of it that's organic and it just sort of evolves, and you kind of go as you grow sort of thing. But there is much of it that just, you need to be a good time manager. You need to be able to, have structure that's going to support you so you can be more efficient and more effective.
That was peak performance and leadership development coach Susan Daniel, sharing just one of the lessons she learned as she transitioned from the structure inherent in her organization as an internal coach to creating that structure to support building her business as an external coach. We dive into all of the lessons she learned and debunk myths that are commonly shared as we transition from working inside an organization to entrepreneurship in this Star Coach episode. Join us. Hello, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here, and we have a great show for you today. As I have worked with coaches over this past 15 years, helping them build their skills, build their brands, create thriving businesses, there's one thing that has been pretty much a consistent, which is when we go into coaching, we're often coming from other kinds of work, other things that we've done to grow and develop as human beings, to offer our services. And often the move into having coaching as a business is that we have worked first within other organizations and in the corporate world. So that transition, if we choose to make that transition from corporate work into entrepreneurship, has some challenges to it and some stories that we tell ourselves that might or might not be true. That's what we're going to focus on today. Now, I want you to be aware that even if your intention is not to move into entrepreneurship, maybe you coach internally, like my guest Susan Daniel did for years. Maybe you want to coach on the side and still have corporate work. You're still going to learn so much in our show today because Susan is a wealth of information about coaching internally and that transition that she made to build her own business and move outside of the organization. So, in today's show, I want to introduce you to Susan Daniel. Susan is committed to unlocking the potential of individuals, teams, and organizations. She began her career at one of the most magical places in the world, Walt Disney World. And that's where she began to build her desire to really create great environments and challenge people to be the best that they can be. So over the course of her years at different organizations, she really looked at how do we help people and leaders and teams stretch and grow. And she decided that she wanted to continue that work in her own business. So she left the corporate world to build her own coaching business as an entrepreneur about a year ago. And it's that transition that we're going to look at. She currently specializes in leadership development and peak performance coaching. She has learned some things along the way that we thought all of you who are wanting to bring your work into the world can learn from her lessons learned. And it just made sense to create this discussion around not only her journey, but some of the things that she had to face and maybe look at differently once she really left corporate world and began that journey to build the business that she wanted to be able to continue to bring her impact forward. So we also have a fun story about how this interview came to be. So you want to listen and see how Susan manifested this for herself. Now, before we go to the interview, I would encourage you, if you enjoy the Star Coach Show, if you are getting value, please let other people know about it and subscribe wherever you listen so that feed is brought to you on a regular basis each and every week. And whenever I do a special episode, you don't miss that. If you're subscribed, you'll be sure to have it delivered to you. So, with that, let's go to my interview with Susan Daniel. Welcome to the Star Coach Show. It's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you, Meg. It's such a pleasure to be here. I'm so excited to be talking with you today.
Well, I'm excited about this topic because the reality is, I've been a coach for 15, 16 years. I've been a coach instructor almost that same amount of time. And I know that the very thing that we're talking about, so many people are facing that. I train over 100 coaches a year, and I would say at least 50% of them are internal coaches that are thinking that maybe someday they want to step into entrepreneurship. They want to offer their services as an external coach. And when you and I were talking about what we want to share about your journey, it's really that concept of what have you learned in your relatively recent transition from corporate world to entrepreneurship. And there are myths that we're going to debunk. There are some strategies that we're going to share. And we're going to challenge the listeners to sort of think about, where are you in this journey? So I've got to say right off the bat, even if you are not currently transitioning from corporate to solopreneurship or entrepreneurship, I'm going to encourage you to stick with us. We're going to be talking about some things that are definitely going to resonate with you. So, Susan, I think one of the places that we want to start is there's sort of different reasons why people might be in this place. And so we're going to start sort of with a premise of two different things that might happen to lead us down this path. You're on one of those paths. Many people are on the other path, but what are those two paths that might lead people to this place?
Well, the two paths that I've had experience with is my own personal journey, which is knowing that I had a longing to own my own business, that my goal and vision was to, at some point in my career, step into this role of being an external coach and consultant. And that was just always my plan for a number of years. And then the other thing that I've seen people experience is that, maybe they are an internal coach or consultant and their job changes, or there's layoffs, or there's a sudden change, they move, whatever the transition is, they think, well, maybe this is the right time. And
Right.
so those are the two places that, the two ways, if you will, that I've seen people sort of decide to go out and start their own practice.
Right. So on the one hand, it is a little more intentional and planned in advance. The other might be choosing to take an opportunity either because it's difficult to find another job, or this is what I've always wanted anyway. Maybe this is what the universe is telling me it's time to do. But sort of taking a transition that is externally motivated into making a decision to do something different.
Exactly.
And so, with those things, one of the myths that we want to sort of bust right out of the gate is that being a coaching expert, just like I know how to coach, I can coach anybody. I'm an expert, that's enough to just sort of hang a shingle and say to the world, I'm here, I'm coaching now. And they flock to us, and we're so busy and life is good. So, what makes that a myth?
Well, one way that it made it a myth for me personally was yes, I was seen as the expert internally. And I got a lot of referrals, or hey, you should call Susan if you need this leadership development program or this executive needs coaching. But there were so many other experts that I relied on that now I need to rely on my own skills. And that is in the area of business, acumen. If I had an accounting problem, I reached out to the accounting department. If I had any issues with my budget or anything of that nature, I had resources. Well, once you're on your own, there's so many business decisions to be made, legal issues, and I couldn't turn to the internal consultants and
Right.
attorneys that I could ask questions about and review contracts. So there was just this whole business piece that logically I knew existed. And so, but when you have to face those decisions, it's like, well, do I go, solopreneur, or do I do business as? Do I form as a LLC? There's just a lot of
So many.
decisions to be made and things to consider, insurance and liability. And I think things that as an internal, maybe I just took for granted because there were those resources were available to me.
I love that perspective. And I think it's I want to kind of set the stage here that we are not trying to deter anyone from moving from internal to external, but we do want to shed some light on here's some things that you should be thinking about. Here's some things to be aware of in the different climate or the different atmosphere that comes from being a business owner versus being a part of an organization. And even part of that is the isolation that can come from being a solopreneur. Even if you're intentional about, doing trainings or doing, like staying in touch, it's still, to Susan's point, when it comes between having to make a decision about something or, who do I bounce this idea off of? You've got to have those networks established, whether you're like part of the Star Coach community or an ICF chapter or, whatever. How are you building a container that will give you the kind of support you need? Because as awesome as you are, and each of you is amazing. Susan is amazing. And yet it starts with this place of I'm not an expert in every single thing. So what is the foundation that I'm building to support my continued growth?
Well, I would say for me, Meg, it's always been around building that community, creating that network. That's actually part of the reason I wanted to pursue this as my career at this stage in my career journey, if you will. Because when I got immersed into the community of professional coaching and became certified, I was really, I felt like this is what I really want to be doing. And so I built a network of colleagues and peers and mentors and people that I knew because I had to establish that support system. Not only did they encourage me, but they were willing to help me, like send me sample contracts and agreements, or you know link me into a particular course, or refer me to somebody who might be able to assist with a marketing strategy. It really does pay off to build that support system and network, and it really has benefited me tremendously.
And for anybody who's thinking, but coaches are my competition, why would I hang out with other coaches? I've got to tell you, hands down, it is my relationship with other coaches that has led to the success I've had in my business more than anything else, more than my training, more than my experience, more than the networking that I've done outside of, or like my, posts and it coaches are really eager to help other coaches. And we don't always have the either the bandwidth or the expertise to help every single person who contacts us or every opportunity that rolls up. But if I know that even though that's not my expertise, that's Susan's expertise, I'm more than happy to say, Susan, here's an opportunity that maybe you want to explore. That happened to me again and again and continues to happen to me.
Exactly, Meg. And it provides that community that helps you to overcome any feelings of isolation. But bringing it also back to the internal aspect, because I was the internal coach and consultant that, known for the leadership and team building programs that we delivered, I would actually be, some of my clients, internal clients, would reach out and say, "Hey, I have this executive, Susan, who needs coaching. And I know you're connected to the ICF community, and we want a certified coach, but it would be better to have an external person for this executive." And oftentimes, if you're an internal coach, that's a better choice,
Right.
and when you have that community, then you can make referrals internally to your HR team, to your senior executives, and say, "Hey, here's 3 people that I would highly recommend for you to consider for this particular coaching engagement." And so it's like paying it forward, Meg, because I
Right.
had done that for so many years that when I did step out on my own, all of those coaches were willing, more than willing, to help me figure out business thing. We just talked about
Mhm.
business act. I mean, how do I price my services? How do I
Right.
think about my business model? Those were all things that really benefited not only being part of a community that offers continuing education on topics like this, but personal relationships where people are willing to just kind of walk this journey with you. And so many people would say, "Oh my gosh, Susan, I remember my first year in business or when I first started out," and they want you to be successful. They want to help.
We'll be back to the show right after this message. One of the favorite things that I do in my business is to mentor coaches through my mentor program. I consistently hear from the coaches who participate that they are reawakened to the power of the process through this program. They become aware of how they're showing up. They can release some bad habits that they've established and really grow in their skills and their confidence. There is such power in coaching, in hearing other styles of coaching, in receiving feedback on the way that we're showing up, and to be able to grow and lean in both group sessions and individual sessions that focus specifically on individual needs. Now, mentor coaching is required as ACC coaches renew their credential. It's also applied to core competency credits for both ACCs and PCCs. As professional coaches, we really have a responsibility and a privilege to continually grow our skills and deepen our client partnerships. I've set the dates for my 2 remaining mentor programs for 2024, and I invite you to explore what's available at starcoachshow.com/mentor, starcoachshow.com/mentor. Would love to have you join us. The groups are filling because they're capped at 10. Now, let's go back to the show.
As a matter of fact, Meg, I even remember at the conference last year where where this whole thing about the podcast interview manifested. I had gone there to actually learn, since it had only been 2 weeks since I had left my internal position, what can I learn about being, a new business owner, a new coach out there? And so I had deliberately spent those 3 days trying to find the themes of, if I could do it all over again, what would I do differently? So that I could just absorb what people, had learned through their own experiences and were willing to share.
I just love that. And people are willing to share those things like, oh, I did this. And if I could have that back, I'd never do that again, but I would do this instead. and being able to learn from those people who have walked even 10 steps ahead of us or, 10 miles ahead of us. So, love that. And you brought up the conference. So let's talk a little bit. This fits sort of under this next myth that, gosh, if it was easy for me to secure clients internally, it's going to be just as easy to secure the clients externally. And we know that it's a whole different ball of wax, right?
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that in just a second, but let's go ahead and talk about how this interview manifested itself, because I think it is a story that people are going to resonate with. You came to a conference last March, 2 weeks out of your internal role, fresh business owner. And I was delighted that you attended my talk.
Yeah.
And my talk was bigger impact, bigger income. And as a sort of a focus of that conversation, it was basically that we play many different roles. We're philosopher and we are author, and we do lots of different things to be in front of people and share our expertise in order to draw people to us. And my goal in that talk was to get people to be thinking about, how am I going to let the world know what it is that I'm offering, because people need what you're offering. As part of that, I had a raffle in the audience for anybody who was interested. I said, I'm putting my whatever where my mouth is. What is that expression?
Putting my oh my gosh,
Yeah, what
I
is
know what
that?
you putting my money where my mouth is.
I'm putting my money where my mouth is. Thank you. And because I truly believe that each one of you needs to have a bigger impact, we're going to raffle off a spot on the show. Now, everybody put their names in, but I drew Susan Daniels' name, which I was delighted to do. And Susan, tell everybody what had happened just prior to you coming into my talk.
I had just had a conversation with one of our guest speakers. We had lots of speakers who were helping out in the area of marketing and, just how to, build your client base and so on. And I was chatting with him and he's like, well, you just need to just get out there and start doing it. He goes, find a way to get interviewed, get on a podcast. And I was like chuckling, going, yes, right. And then literally less than an hour later, uh, you pulled my name out of the hat. And I was scared and excited at the same time because I couldn't believe that it had just happened, and scared because I thought, oh my God, what in the world would I talk about? I don't, I had no clue. And even when you and I first talked several months ago, I just said, could you give me a little bit more time? This is such an evolution and a journey that I need more time to think about what is it that your audience would want to hear about. And it suddenly dawned on me in the last, month or so that maybe it's the transition of internal to external, because I couldn't possibly be the only person that is,
Oh, absolutely
wanted to
not.
make this career choice.
And isn't it just motivating and also, I think, validating when we can hear somebody else's story? And I just love the story because when I pulled your name, you looked dumbstruck and you came up to me afterwards and you said, I have to tell you about this conversation I had an hour before your talk. And you were still sort of reeling from, look what I manifested, without even realizing that I was manifesting it. And this is the other thing I want you to think about and everybody to think about. We have far more perspective and wisdom to share than we sometimes give ourselves credit for. So, yes, we landed on this topic together. There was any number of topics that we could have shared about that you are well versed in. I think sometimes we just cover up our own wisdom because we think, doesn't everybody know that? And no, not everybody knows that. So, delighted to have you here. Now, that goes back to the concept of what we need to do differently when we're an external coach or a business owner to secure clients that might have been different than what we did as an internal coach. So, what do you want us to think about? What was your experience like as an internal coach versus what you've done this last year?
Well, it does remind me, Meg, of again, if I hadn't need to do any kind of marketing or communication, I just reached out to my marketing and communication partners internally. So I had to discover who are they externally. And so, I was able to, again, at the conference, make some contacts and really, start to question myself around things that I'd never really thought about, like my online presence. LinkedIn was where I started because as an internal, most of the time, the only reason you update your LinkedIn or do anything with LinkedIn is if you're searching for a new job, or if you're an internal like I am and you just want to, look at somebody's profile based on a resume you've received. So I had to really begin by looking at my online presence. What is it that who's my audience? Who's my, the niche is really, it's true. I remember sitting with a fellow coach. We were having that conversation very much like you were just describing, where her business had grown so much that she likes to keep a database of other coaches that she can rely on if she has some business come her way that she wants to refer. And so she said, well, I'm going to put you in my database. Can we just talk about your areas of expertise, your niche, blah, And so she did all of that. We were sitting in a restaurant and just meeting, very casually over a glass of wine. And I asked her afterwards if I could just see what she had written. And when she showed it to me, my aha moment was, oh my God, I sound like every other coach out there. And so even though I didn't ever expect to have that come out of that interaction with her, I realized I didn't know what my differentiator was. So there's this whole element that I'm still discovering, and it's really important. But it does take time, and it takes partnering again with your coaching community and other experts to help you define what that is. And so, now it's just accepting the fact that it doesn't happen overnight and that it's an evolution. A friend of mine said recently, just as we looked at my strategy, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year, just remember, Susan, it's a evolution. And I am pleased to say, though, that I did set milestones that I achieved, which I'm very proud of. And
As
so
as I can be proud for you as well. That's
thank
lovely.
you. Yeah. So, because when you secure that first contract and it's already been renewed now in 2024, and it's consistent and it's exciting, and I have another, it'll start to build on itself. And so the similarity for me is recognizing that some of the same things that I did internally to stay in communication and build my credibility internally, I need to do that externally also, and keep in touch with my clients and communicate with them on a regular basis and be sure that what I'm offering them adds value.
So
It's
good.
it's
The other
that part is the same for sure.
exact as is brand, right? So sometimes we think that we establish our brand only if we're in our own business, or if that brand is strictly to do with business. And the reality is our brand is who we are and how we're showing up and how we're engaging. So if you're an successful internal coach, you have a strong brand as well. You've got the brand that people want to engage with you. They know that that relationship is going to help bring them value and get them across the finish line and whatever it is that they're working on. And if you're doing the transition from internal to external, I would encourage you to be thinking about what was my internal brand? What maybe even interviewing some people about what is the what are three words that you would use to describe me or our relationship? What was it that you gained? What were the results that you get? Those results that you got as an internal coach are going to translate into what you offer as an external coach. So it's not like there is this hard red line between these two things and they do not touch. No, you've built your so many things internally that it can be a disservice to yourself to forget about everything or to think somehow that it doesn't apply to now.
It's very transferable. Probably one of the biggest lessons learned is there's a lot that I had to learn, and there's definitely a learning curve, but there's far more that's transferable than you realize. And really beginning with, the relationships that you build internally, as well as those relationships that I had been nurturing when I was internal with the external community.
So the next myth is that if you are successful internally, that guarantees that you're going to be successful externally. What are your thoughts about that?
Again, you have to, I'm just going to go back to, you have to add value. You have to go back to and think about, what is the impact that I had? How would people describe the services that they received, the transformation that they received, and it's the same, again, internal as it is external. And so that part of it is just something that continues to be what I strive to do. Is, I ask for feedback. I ask for feedback. I know, Meg, you've talked about this on some of your other shows, and it's really inspired me. Don't forget to find out from your clients what it is that you're offering, because that helps you to define, again, what your area of expertise is, what your niche is, what makes you unique. And just the same as you would get it internally, maybe in terms of a performance review or
Right.
feedback, you can do that externally. And I'm really, practicing some of those same things as an external, and finding out what people find valuable.
So good. And you've got to be intentional about it, right? It's not going to be built into the system the way that it is internally. You've got to say, if this is important to me, I'm going to be reaching out to gain this. I'm going to be, seeking out this information. Now, one of the other things that we talked about, and I think this might be a good place to kind of put that in, is if you were on that path where you're currently an internal, whether you're a coach or you're working in an organization in whatever role, but your goal someday is to be an external coach. What are some things that you can do to be intentional, Susan, when you're an internal person that kind of helps set you up for success externally?
Thank you, Meg, because that definitely was something that I thought that was very much part of my strategy. And so when I realized that coaching was the profession that I wanted to have for the rest of my career, if you will, I ensured that, number one, that it got written into my job description. So I had always been in leadership development, organizational development, in all of the
Right.
development areas in the organization. So I'd had many different titles under that umbrella, but I just ensured that my training, or that my job description had coaching in it, because if you are seeking credentials, which I wanted to become ICF credential, then you will get credit for all your internal coaching hours, as long as it's part of your job description, because that's paid coaching hours.
Mhm.
And so when I took the idea of becoming credentialed to my boss, he was very supportive, and actually he ended up paying for my coach training. And then over the years after I became ACC credentialed, paid for all the continuing education credits, my monthly meetings, association fees and dues. There's so many things that you can take advantage of as an internal coach to kind of pave the way to
Right.
make it a smooth transition when you're ready to make that move.
And sometimes it can even be things like assessment certifications. If there's a company
Exactly.
that maybe the company wants to be DISC certified, like to be able to have their people get the Hogan or the DISC or the whatever, and they want their internal coaches to be able to provide that, then they might very well send you through that. Well, when you leave the company, now I certainly wouldn't recommend that you get that certification and leave the company. Most companies have safeguards for that, like that you have to be there for a certain period of time. However, point being, that certification is your certification. It's not the company's certifications.
That was definitely one of my strategies as well.
So good. So good. All right. So we need to consider, yes, I had people clamoring for my services as an internal coach, but what did I learn from that? What part of that is transferable to being an external and an entrepreneur? Because there are many things that are transferable. However, it's not a slam dunk that I was busy all the time as an internal coach, therefore I'm going to be busy all the time as an external coach. Any other thoughts about that topic before we move on to our final?
Just probably the other part of that is just assuming if you love coaching, and I do, and I have known for a long time that that's what basically what I've been born to do. That's my strength, and that's my calling. There's still a lot of other hats that you have to wear. There are so many of so I love what I do, but I'm also falling in love with things that are challenging me, helping me to grow. I'm learning new skills and learning new things that as an entrepreneur and business owner that is quite exciting actually. So I am still growing and learning, and that part of it is very exciting. And even as an external coach, I'll see there may be credentials. For example, I'm one of my goals for 2024, Meg, is to go for my PCC. I mean, that I feel is just the next natural progression for me as, at where I am in my career. Because internally, I did the credentialing more for my own, benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And now I've had people say, well, you don't really need to go for PCC, Susan. And I'm like, no, I don't, but I want to challenge myself. I want to keep getting better. I want to go for that because it's just important to me. And so I would just say that part, you can challenge yourself internally and keep growing, but also once you do externally, there's plenty of things that you can do as well.
Continue to grow and strive for. So good. So that rolls into our final, which is that being a solopreneur means less structure. And, what kind of blows the top off of that myth?
Oh gosh. What blows the top off of that for me is just that the number of coaches that told me you need to have systems and processes, and you need to have plans for your day, for your week, for your month, that there's really a lot more structure to success than you might think there would be. Yes, there's a lot of it that's organic and it just sort of evolves, and you kind of go as you grow sort of thing. But there is much of it that just you need to be a good time manager. You need to be able to, have structure that's going to support you so you can be more efficient and more effective. And
I
that
couldn't
might
agree
mean,
more. Yeah.
yeah, that might mean reaching out and hiring somebody to help you do the things you don't do well. I mean, for me, the realization was, yes, I understand about my online marketing and all of these things that I need to do, but I really need some help with the branding piece, the design
Mm-hmm.
piece and helping. And so you start to get a sense for what you might be able to get help with or to delegate. And those are just some of the things that help free up your time as well so that you can spend the time doing the things that you love to do. So that's kind of a big part of the self-awareness is recognizing your strengths and what you love to do and what maybe is more difficult or you just don't want to do it. So it's better
Right.
to have somebody else help you with that.
Right. So that whole concept of structure is, to me, the make or break of being successful as a solopreneur. When we work in organizations, there is a built-in structure of accountability, a built-in structure. I mean, you've got meetings on your calendars, you've got expectations, you've got a system that you're working within. And as a solopreneur, if you're just flying by the seat of your pants all the time, you're not going to. You heard Susan say just a few minutes ago, I set my goals and I've met those goals. I'm going to set new milestones and meet those new milestones. That's part of the structure. If you're just sort of like, oh, well, I built it, so they're going to come somehow. The structure is absolutely the thing that will give you freedom as a business owner. Otherwise, it's frustrating. If you don't have any systems, any structure built in, I hesitate to say, but I think that your chances of success are going to reduce.
I would agree with you. It's almost a little bit of a paradox that you think, oh, I'm going to own my own business. I'm going to have all this freedom and autonomy. Yes, you have a lot of freedom and autonomy, but that doesn't always serve you well if you don't have the structure to support what you want to do, because it's too easy to get distracted or find yourself working on the things that don't add the best value or have the greatest impact. So you really structure is it has helped me. It becomes your best friend.
Exactly. And the other side of that is if you think I'm going to work less as a solopreneur, depending upon what your goals are, because it might be that, if I have one or two clients, I'm good. That's all I want to do. And I've got my streams of who refers to me. That's great. But in general, especially this first year to 3 years is when you're building your foundation, you're building the infrastructure of your business. And it might very well be that you're working longer hours than when you were internal. I've had a couple shows of people who are working internally at the same time that they're building their side hustle, which is going to become their business. And that increases the hours even more. But it's sort of like, what's the plan? What's the structure? Because often we can do anything for a certain period of time to get that going and to get that momentum.
Agreed. Agreed. Yeah. So thank you, Meg. Those are the
Absolutely.
things that I have really, been reflecting on as lessons learned, as myths or maybe just misconceptions of
Yes.
things that as I got started, I guess I didn't realize how much was going to be really transferable. And that, yes, it was a new beginning, but I wasn't brand new at this. There were things I was new at, but I wasn't brand new to coaching.
I love that. And I just want to emphasize that because often when I'm working with coaches as their mentor or, we're working to build their business together, it's almost as though there's a mindset that, oh my gosh, I'm a new coach. So it's all about new, new, new. And this is, I'm not experienced and I'm not this and I'm not that. Now, that's not the situation we're talking about with you as you were internal coach going to external coach, but it's the same kind of thing. It's like, I'll say, whoa, slow down. What was your life? You brought let's inventory everything that you brought in to this experience because you didn't hatch from an egg the day before you became a coach. You have had experience, and maybe it was more mentoring or advising, and yet you've gotten results with people and you have what is it that you're let's inventory what it is that you already have. And so it's the same kind of thing. None of us are starting a clean slate, completely unexperienced and without our talents and our strengths. So what are those talents and strengths that you're bringing forward? So Susan, thank you so much for bringing your journey. So helpful. And I hope that you stay in touch with us. Let us know how your journey is going because you're taking the world by storm and the world is ready for you. So thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Meg. I appreciate it.
I absolutely loved my time with Susan. It was such fun inviting her to be a guest on the show after she put her name in the hat. She took the chance. She courageously stepped into that space. And I encourage all of you to courageously step into the space of getting your work into the world. If you want to know more about Susan, go to starcoachshow.com/380, starcoachshow.com/380, and grab the links to be able to connect with Susan. My conversation with her continues in the Star Coach community, where she gave additional information about her journey that would be very helpful. And if you want to know more about the community, go to starcoachshow.com/community to learn all about the things that we do in our 4 live events every single month, along with a huge library of bite-sized content that helps you strengthen your skills, strengthen your business acumen, and really show up in the world ready to make a bang. StarCoachShow.community to learn more. Come back next week as I'm introducing you to Emma Donovan, and we're talking about personal branding. So until next week, this is Meg Rentschler wishing you the very best for your success. Please subscribe wherever you listen so that you never miss an ounce of the great wisdom that our guests bring to the Star Coach Show. Thanks for being here. Have a great week.